The polished mahogany of the witness stand felt as cold as a tombstone under my trembling hands. Across the room, my senior manager, Carla, had a smirk on her face, a sharp, cruel line that I knew all too well. It was the same smirk she wore in the office, the one that preceded a public humiliation or a quiet act of professional sabotage. She had just finished her testimony, a chilling masterpiece of fiction that painted her as a patient, benevolent mentor and a young woman named Lena as an ungrateful, incompetent, and ultimately unstable problem. Now the company's lawyer, a man whose expensive suit couldn't hide his predatory nature, was walking toward me. His own smile was a cheap, plastic imitation of Carla's. He looked at me like I was a piece on a chessboard, a pawn that was about to be sacrificed for the queen. He thought I was just another timid employee who would fall in line. He thought my silence in the office, a silence I had cultivated for years, would follow me here, into this hallowed hall of justice. He was wrong. My name is Anna. I had stayed quiet for months, a ghost in the hallways, watching my co-workers methodically and cruelly ostracize the new adopted girl on our team. Now we were all here, trapped in the suffocating tension of this courtroom because of it. And the judge's sudden, thunderous demand for silence. That was just the beginning. It was the moment that would unravel a shocking secret, a secret connecting my own hidden, fractured past to her devastating present. Before I continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, comment below, and leave your like. Helps a lot. It all started the way these insidious things often do, with a flicker of corporate excitement that was quickly soured by deep-seated prejudice. Our firm, Vanguard Creative Solutions, absolutely adored its progressive image. We had glossy diversity posters in the break room featuring smiling, artfully multi-ethnic faces, and we received bland, corporate-approved emails every time a Cultural Heritage Month rolled around. But behind the closed doors and inside the open-plan office, the reality was a stark, brutal contrast. The entire social ecosystem of our department revolved around a single, powerful son, Carla Jacobs. Carla was a senior creative director, undeniably brilliant at her job, but her immense talent was matched only by her profound toxicity. She had cultivated a court of loyalists who orbited her, echoing her opinions, laughing at her cruel jokes, and amplifying her venomous whispers. If you were in Carla's golden circle, you were safe, your career path smoothed and gilded. If you were on the outside, you were invisible or worse, a target. I wasn't in or out. I was a ghost. A quiet, obsessively efficient project manager who kept her head down, met her deadlines without fail, and lived in a state of constant low-grade anxiety. I had my reasons for not making waves, for making myself as small and unnoticeable as possible. My job was the single most stable thing in my life. It was the anchor that allowed me to send money home every month to my aging foster mother, the only mother I'd ever known. I had been in the system myself, a quiet, watchful kid who learned very early on that survival often meant becoming invisible. You learned to read the moods of a room in a split second, to anticipate anger before it boiled over, to be helpful but never memorable. Those lessons had stuck with me, tattooed onto my soul. And so, I watched, I listened, and I stayed silent. Then Lena Washington arrived. She was introduced on a bright Monday morning, the sunlight streaming through the large office windows, creating a false sense of optimism. Our division head, Mr. Harrison, a man whose spine seemed to be made of jelly, gave his usual boilerplate welcome speech. "Everyone, this is Lena Washington, our new junior graphic designer. She comes to us with a fantastic portfolio and a great attitude. Let's all extend a warm Vanguard welcome and make her feel at home." A smattering of half-hearted, perfunctory applause followed. I saw Lena scan the faces in the room, her own expression open and brimming with a hope that felt dangerously naive in this environment. She was young, maybe in her early 20s, with bright, intelligent eyes and a smile that seemed genuine, not corporate. And she was black. In our overwhelmingly white department, she stood out visually before she'd even said a word. When it was her turn to speak, her voice was clear and confident. She mentioned she'd just moved to the city, how excited she was for the opportunity, and then she added casually that she was adopted. She said it with a straightforward confidence, as if it were just another fact about her, like her hometown or her favorite color. But I saw the flicker in Carla's eyes. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible shift, but I'd been studying Carla's micro-expressions for years as a survival tactic. It was the look of a predator that had just spotted an unfamiliar, intriguing creature in its territory. It was a look of assessment, of sizing up a new variable for potential weaknesses. After the meeting, Lena, still radiating that hopeful energy, walked up to a small group of designers clustered together. The group included Carla and her two primary lieutenants, Mark and Jessica. "Hi," Lena began, her smile still in place. "I'm really looking forward to working with you all. Carla, I've heard so much about your work on the Sterling Automotive campaign. It was truly brilliant." Carla performed a slow, deliberate once-over, her eyes cataloging Lena's perfectly chosen blazer, her eager face, her hopeful posture. "Thanks," she said, the word clipped and cold. Then, in a move of breathtakingly casual cruelty, she pointedly turned her shoulder to Lena, physically closing the circle. "Mark," she said, her voice now warm and conspiratorial, "did you get the final proofs for the new client? We need to review them before lunch." "Right here," Mark said, immediately turning his back on Lena as well. Jessica chimed in, her voice artificially bright. "Speaking of lunch, are we still on for that new Thai place?" It was a classic social execution, and it was brutal in its efficiency. A social wall, constructed in seconds. Lena was left standing on the outside, her smile finally faltering as the reality of the snub settled in. My stomach clenched into a tight, painful knot. I was only a few feet away, pretending to be absorbed in a file. Our eyes met for a split second across the aisle. I saw the raw hurt in hers, the flash of confusion and humiliation. She must have seen the guilt in mine, the shame of a bystander, before I quickly, cowardly, looked away. The silence I chose in that moment felt like a physical betrayal, a heavy stone that settled deep in my gut. "It's not my business," I told myself, the coward's mantra. "Stay invisible. I need this job." But I knew even then that I was a coward, and that the foundation of my carefully constructed invisibility had just been cracked. The days and weeks that followed were a masterclass in psychological warfare, a death by 1,000 paper cuts. There was never one big, dramatic event you could report to HR. It was a relentless campaign of tiny aggressions, each one designed to isolate and undermine. When the team ordered coffee, a daily ritual, Lena's order was always mysteriously forgotten. When after-work plans for drinks were made, they were whispered just loud enough for her to overhear the details of a place she wasn't being invited to. Her name was consistently left off non-essential email chains, the ones filled with office banter and inside jokes, effectively severing her from the social currents of the team and making her feel like a perpetual outsider. Carla conducted this cruel orchestra with the skill of a maestro, always hiding behind a thin, shimmering veil of plausible deniability. "Oh, Lena, you probably wouldn't recognize this brand. It's a very high-end legacy name," she'd say in a meeting, the implication hanging in the air that Lena's background made her unable to comprehend luxury or history. During one particularly awful brainstorming session, Lena, trying to contribute, suggested a campaign idea based on the concept of chosen family. Carla tilted her head, a gesture she used before delivering a killing blow. "That's an interesting perspective," she mused. "But we're aiming for a more traditional, relatable narrative here. You know, for normal families." The poison was in that single, emphasized word. Everyone in that room knew exactly what she meant. Lena, the adopted girl, wasn't from a normal family, and therefore her perspective was invalid. To her immense credit, Lena tried to rise above it. She was incredibly talented, a fact that seemed to only fuel Carla's resentment. Her designs were fresh, modern, and insightful. She poured every ounce of her being into her work, staying late almost every night, trying to prove her worth through sheer, undeniable competence. She would approach Carla to ask for feedback, her tone always professional and respectful, even when Carla would glance at her work for a mere second and dismiss it with a dismissive wave. "It's fine," she'd say, already walking away. fine from Carla was a death sentence. It meant your work wasn't even worthy of her critique. I saw it all from the silent safety of my desk. I saw Lena eating lunch alone day after day, the sound of the team's boisterous laughter echoing from the break room she no longer tried to enter. I saw the bright, hopeful light in her eyes dim a little more each week, replaced by a guarded weariness. My guilt was a living thing, a monster growing in my chest. One afternoon, in a team review, Carla publicly eviscerated a color palette Lena had chosen, calling it garish and amateurish in front of everyone. Later that day, I saw Lena in a deserted hallway near the back exit, her shoulders shaking, her professional composure finally breaking as she hastily wiped a tear from her cheek. My heart pounded in my ears. A war raged inside me. This is it, I told myself. Say something. Anything. I walked toward her, my footsteps feeling unnaturally loud in the quiet hall. Are you okay? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She looked up, startled, and quickly pulled herself together, her mask of professionalism snapping back into place. Oh yeah, fine. Just bad allergies today. Carla was completely out of line, I blurted out, the words feeling clumsy and inadequate. A flicker of surprise and gratitude crossed her face. But before she could answer, the sharp click-clack of heels echoed down the hall. It was Jessica. She shot me a look of pure venom, a silent warning. Anna, Mr. Harrison is looking for you, she said, her voice dripping with a false, saccharine sweetness. She then placed a proprietary hand on Lena's arm, a gesture of ownership. Don't mind Anna, she said to Lena, but her words were meant for me. She gets a little emotional. I froze, paralyzed by shame and fear. Jessica had, in one swift move, dismissed my gesture of solidarity, painted me as an unstable hysteric, and reasserted the group's absolute power. I mumbled an apology and scurried away, my face burning with humiliation. I had tried to reach out a hand and had it slapped away, only succeeding in putting a target on my own back. After that incident, I retreated even further into my shell. My silence was no longer just a habit. It was my fortress. The breaking point came 3 months into Lena's employment. Mr. Harrison announced a major pitch for a new, highly coveted client, a project that could define a career. In the main brainstorming meeting, after a series of safe, predictable ideas were thrown out, Lena spoke up, her voice quiet but firm. What if we build the entire campaign around the idea of future-proofing legacy? She proposed. We could use visuals that blend natural, historical elements with sleek, futuristic tech. It's about connecting a company's storied past to its innovative future. She went on, outlining a stunning, emotionally resonant concept. It was complex, intelligent, and beautiful. When she finished, there was a beat of surprised silence in the room. It was, without a single doubt, the best idea we had heard. Carla looked up from her notepad, a pen poised in her hand. A bit sentimental, don't you think? She said coolly, her voice dripping with condescension. And the phrase, future-proofing legacy, is a mouthful. Clunky. Well, we need something edgier, sharper. She then proceeded to pitch a completely different, much safer, and frankly boring idea. Mark and Jessica immediately chimed in, praising her sharp instincts and clear vision. Lena's idea was bulldozed, buried under an avalanche of sycophantic praise for Carla. Lena sank back in her chair, her face a mask of profound disappointment. 2 weeks later, on the day of the big pitch, we were all gathered in the main conference room for a final run-through. The presentation slides came up on the giant screen. And there it was. The headline, in bold, sleek letters, read, "Future-proofing your legacy." Carla had stolen it. She had stolen Lena's entire concept, polished it just enough to claim it, and was now presenting it as her own masterpiece. My head snapped toward Lena. She was staring at the screen in utter, frozen disbelief. Her gaze shifted to Carla, who pointedly refused to meet her eye, and then to Mr. Harrison, who was now passionately, ignorantly selling her idea to the room. After the pitch, which was of course a huge success, the team celebrated. Mr. Harrison was lavishing praise on Carla. Carla, you've outdone yourself. Future-proofing your legacy is pure poetry. Genius. Lena walked over to them, her body trembling with a quiet, righteous rage. That was my idea, she said, her voice low but carrying across the room. Carla feigned wide-eyed surprise. I'm sorry, what was that, Lena? The concept. Future-proofing your legacy. That was my idea. From the brainstorming meeting 2 weeks ago. Carla's cronies immediately jumped to her defense. Wow, Lena, Mark said, shaking his head in mock disappointment. That's a really serious accusation. We all heard Carla come up with that. Lena looked at Mr. Harrison, her eyes pleading for a shred of integrity from him. Mr. Harrison, you were there. You heard me say it. Mr. Harrison, a man who hated conflict more than anything, looked deeply uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Now, Lena, emotions are running high from the success. Perhaps you're misremembering how the creative process unfolded. Misremembering. Lena's voice cracked, the injustice of it all overwhelming her. She stole my work. That's enough, Carla said, her voice dropping to a glacial temperature. I think you're upset that your own contributions weren't up to par, and now you're lashing out to cover your own inadequacies. It's unprofessional and frankly, it's pathetic. The next day, Lena was fired for creating a hostile work environment and insubordination. It was a neat, tidy corporate execution. She packed her few belongings into a small cardboard box in complete silence, as the rest of us pretended to be intensely focused on our screens. As she walked toward the exit, her head held high, her eyes found mine one last time. The anger was gone, replaced by a profound, weary sadness that cut me to the bone. I looked away, and the stone of my guilt became a mountain. If you're still here with me, don't forget to subscribe, activate notifications, leave your like, and share this video with someone. Life at Vanguard Creative Solutions went on, but the air was different. It was thick with unspoken words and shared guilt. Carla had won. She was celebrated for landing the massive new client, and her position in the company was stronger and more untouchable than ever. But it was a hollow, rotten victory that haunted the office. People avoided eye contact in the hallways. The laughter in the break room felt forced and brittle. We were all complicit in the execution, and we knew it. My silence had bought me my continued safety, my paycheck, my stability. But the price was my self-respect, a currency I was quickly learning I couldn't live without. 2 months later they arrived. Thick, official-looking envelopes placed on our desks by a courier. My hands trembled as I tore mine open. I'd been served with a subpoena. Lena Washington was suing Vanguard for wrongful termination, racial discrimination, and creating a hostile work environment. And my name was on the witness list. A wave of icy, gut-wrenching panic washed over me. This wasn't an office squabble anymore. This was real. Federal court case. A meeting was called immediately with all of us who were subpoenaed, along with Mr. Harrison and 2 stone-faced corporate lawyers from headquarters. The lead lawyer, a man with a smile that never reached his cold eyes, laid out the company's strategy. The narrative is simple, he explained, his voice smooth and commanding. Lena Washington was a disgruntled employee with documented performance issues. She failed to integrate with the team, and when she was justly terminated for her unprofessional behavior, she fabricated these malicious and baseless claims to extort money from the company. We are all on the same team here. Our story must be consistent. It was a direct, unambiguous order to lie, to commit perjury. I watched as Mark and Jessica nodded eagerly, ready to play their parts. I sat there, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it might break through. Carla looked directly at me from across the polished table, her gaze pinning me to my chair. They have no proof, she said, her voice a low growl meant for me alone. It's her word against ours. As long as we all stick together, she doesn't stand a chance. It was a threat, perfectly wrapped in a plea for corporate solidarity. The weeks leading up to my deposition were a special kind of torture. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lena's face, not angry, but wounded and disappointed. I saw my own reflection in the dark office windows at night, a coward always looking away. During this time, I found myself clinging to the one tangible piece of my past I had left. It was a small, silver locket shaped like a crescent moon, with a tiny, delicate star nestled in its curve. My foster mother had given it to me on my 18th birthday. She said it was pinned to the blanket I was wrapped in when I was found as a baby. It was my only link to a family I never knew, a life I couldn't remember. My case file, which I'd read 100 times, mentioned I had an older sister who was with me when we were found. Her name was Sophia. We were separated by social services. She was supposed to have the matching piece, a son. I'd spent years searching for her, typing her name into databases, hitting one soul-crushing dead end after another. The locket was all I had left of her, a symbol of a connection I feared I'd never find. As part of the legal discovery process, we were required to review all the documents submitted by Lena's attorney. One evening, alone in a vast, silent conference room, I was flipping through a binder filled with her personal exhibits. And then I saw it. It was a scanned photograph, labeled Exhibit 24C. A worn, creased picture of two little girls, no older than 4 and 5, sitting on a park bench. The younger girl, with a shy smile and a missing front tooth, was me. I knew the photo instantly. A copy of it was tucked away in my own memory box. The older girl, her arm thrown protectively around my small shoulders, was my sister, Sophia. And there, dangling from a thin chain around her neck, was a silver charm. Sun. The perfect, unmistakable match to my moon. I dropped the binder. The sound cracked through the silence of the empty room. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely pick up the page. Beneath the photograph was a caption from Lena's personal declaration, words she had written for the court. "This is the only photo I have with my biological sister, Anna. We were separated when I was 5. I was adopted a year later and my name was changed from Sophia to Lena. I am submitting this as evidence of my personal background and to demonstrate the deep personal importance of family, a theme I tried to bring to my work at Vanguard, which was consistently dismissed and ridiculed." Sophia. Lena was Sophia. The room started to spin, the walls seeming to warp and melt. It couldn't be. The world tilted on its axis, and my entire reality fractured into a million pieces. Lena, the girl I had watched them torment. The girl I was too scared to defend. The girl I had averted my eyes from. She was my sister. The sister I had spent my entire adult life looking for. I stumbled out of the conference room, gasping for air that wouldn't come. All this time she had been right there, just a few desks away. The universe, in its infinite, cruel, and unbelievable irony, had placed my long-lost sister directly in my path, and I did nothing but watch in silence as the world hurt her all over again. The guilt I'd felt before was a flickering candle compared to the inferno that now raged inside me. The lawyer's words echoed in my head. Our story must be consistent. They wanted me to get on the witness stand and methodically destroy my own sister for the sake of a corporation and a bully. That night, for the first time in my life, the fear that had dictated my every move began to fade. It was burned away, replaced by something cold, hard, and terrifyingly clear: rage and resolve. My deposition was in 1 week. The trial was scheduled a month after that. My silence had been my prison for 30 years. It was time to break free. I wasn't just going to tell the truth. I was going to burn their kingdom of lies to the ground. The day of the trial felt utterly surreal. The courtroom was an imposing, cavernous chamber of dark wood and cold marble that seemed to absorb all sound and light. On one side of the room sat Lena, Sophia, with her lawyer. She looked small and vulnerable in her chair, but there was a fire in her eyes that I hadn't seen in the sterile halls of the office. On the other side was the Vanguard team. Mr. Harrison, looking pale and nervous, the corporate lawyers, and Carla, who looked completely at ease, dressed in a sharp, intimidatingly expensive suit. She truly believed she was untouchable. The morning was a blur of legal jargon and procedural motions. Then the testimonies began. Mr. Harrison performed his role as the regretful, disappointed leader perfectly. Mark and Jessica took the stand and parroted the company line, recounting fabricated stories of Lena's unprofessionalism and inability to collaborate. Then Carla took the stand. She was a marvel of breathtaking deceit, her voice calm, measured, and deeply convincing. She twisted every single act of her cruelty into an act of kindness. Excluding Lena from lunch was framed as giving the new girl her space to decompress. Dismissing her ideas was gently redirecting her creative energies toward more viable concepts. Her theft of the pitch concept was her most audacious and infuriating lie. Lena had mentioned a vague, undeveloped thought in a group setting, Carla said smoothly, looking directly at the jury with her earnest, trustworthy eyes. I was inspired by her kernel of an idea and, as a manager, I did my job. I developed it into the successful campaign it became. I even gave her credit for the initial spark in a team meeting, but she seemed to want all the credit for herself. I watched the jury. Some of them were nodding, their faces sympathetic. They were buying it. My heart sank into my stomach like a stone. Finally, it was my turn. The defense calls Anna Petrova to the stand. My legs felt like they were made of lead as I walked to the front of the courtroom. I consciously avoided looking at Lena. I couldn't bear to see the face of the sister I had already failed so profoundly. I sat down, and the bailiff administered the oath. My hand was on the Bible, but my mind was on the crescent moon locket in my pocket, its metal cool against my skin. Vanguard's lawyer began with simple, disarming questions, trying to lull me into their pre-written script. Ms. Petrova, you worked with Lena Washington for the entire duration of her employment, correct? Yes. And would you describe Carla Jacobs as a supportive manager? I hesitated, the lie catching in my throat. She is a demanding manager. The lawyer's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. But supportive of her team, wouldn't you agree? She pushes her team, I repeated, my voice flat and empty. He moved on, getting to the heart of the matter, leading me down the path of their fabricated story, straight off a cliff. And Miss Petrova, did you ever at any time witness Miss Carla Jacobs, or anyone else at Vanguard, mistreat, ostracize, or discriminate against Lena Washington in any way? This was it. The moment. The entire case, my entire life, hung suspended on this single question. The room was utterly still. Could feel every eye on me. I finally forced myself to look at Lena. She wasn't looking at me with hope. She wasn't expecting anything from me. Why would she? I had never given her a single reason to. I took a deep breath. The silence in the courtroom stretched, becoming a physical presence. Carla stared at me, her eyes narrowed, a silent, furious command screaming across the room. Lie. Do as you were told. The lawyer prompted me, his voice sharp with impatience. Ms. Petrova. It's a simple yes or no question. Suddenly, from across the room, Carla let out a loud, contemptuous scoff. It was a sound of pure arrogance and dismissal, a final public attempt to intimidate me into submission. Lena's lawyer shot to her feet. Objection. The witness is being actively intimidated by Ms. Jacobs. The room erupted. Lawyers from both sides were shouting. Through it all, I saw the judge's face darken with fury. He grabbed his gavel and brought it down with a thunderous, echoing crack. Order, he roared, his voice filling every corner of the vast room. I will have order. He glared first at the lawyers, then directly at Carla. Another outburst like that from you, Ms. Jacobs, and you will be held in contempt of this court. I want absolute silence in this courtroom until I say otherwise. Not another word from anyone. The silence that followed was absolute, a perfect, judge-ordered vacuum waiting to be filled. And in that pristine, profound quiet, I finally found my voice. I turned away from the lawyer and looked toward the jury, and then, finally, I looked right at Lena. Before I answer that question, I began, my voice trembling but clear. I have to tell my own truth. Vanguard's lawyer shot up to object, but a single lethal glare from the judge froze him in place. I was a coward, I said, the words spilling out, a confession to the entire world. Everything you have heard today from Carla, Mark, and Jessica is a lie. A carefully constructed, malicious lie. They ostracized Lena from her very first day. They were cruel, they were dismissive, and yes, they stole her work. I saw all of it, every single day. And I said nothing. The shame of that silence is something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my crescent moon locket, holding it up in the silent room. But my silence wasn't just a failure of character. It was a failure of family. I looked directly at Lena, my sister. My name is Anna Petrova. When I was 3 years old, I was separated from my older sister in foster care. Her name was Sophia. All I have left of her is this locket, a crescent moon. I was always told that she had the matching piece, a sun. Tears were streaming down my face now, hot and unstoppable. Lena. Sophia. In your personal exhibits for this case, you submitted a photograph. My voice broke on a sob. It was a photograph of us. I didn't know until I saw that picture. I didn't know it was you. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Lena's face went completely pale. Her eyes, wide with disbelief, were locked on the locket in my hand. Slowly, as if in a trance, she reached under the collar of her blouse and pulled out a thin silver chain. On the end of it was a small, delicate sun. Perfect match. Chaos erupted. The room dissolved into a storm of shocked murmurs. I saw Carla's face crumple, the mask of smug confidence melting away into horrified shock. Her intricate web of lies had been annihilated, not by a legal argument, but by a truth so profound and impossible it defied all strategy. The judge, his own face a mixture of astonishment and something that looked like compassion, banged his gavel repeatedly, calling for a recess. I stepped down from the witness stand, my legs unsteady, and walked toward Lena. She met me halfway in the middle of the courtroom floor. We stood there for a moment that stretched for an eternity, two strangers who shared a beginning, an ending, and now a new beginning. Sophia, I whispered, my voice choked with 30 years of loss. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks. Anna, she breathed. And then she was in my arms, and we were clinging to each other, two lost halves of a whole, crying for the years we had lost and for the impossible, miraculous moment we had found each other. The case settled quickly after that. Faced with my sworn testimony and the imminent risk of a federal perjury investigation, Vanguard's lawyers scrambled to make it all go away. The settlement was substantial. Carla was fired, along with Mark and Jessica. But none of that felt like the real victory. The real victory was sitting in a sunlit cafe weeks later, across from my sister. We spent hours and hours piecing together the fractured narratives of our lives, our silver sun and moon lockets sitting side by side on the table between us, finally reunited. There was so much pain and lost time to unpack, an ocean of grief for the lives we could have had together. But for the first time there was also an unbreakable connection, a profound sense of peace. We had found each other. My silence was my greatest shame, a heavy cloak I had worn for most of my life. But in that silent courtroom, given the space to finally speak, I learned that your voice, even if it trembles, can be the most powerful weapon against lies, can expose cruelty and injustice. And sometimes, if you are miraculously, impossibly lucky, it can lead you home. That's why you can't just stand by when you see someone being wronged. Speaking up isn't just about defending them. It's about defending your own humanity. You never know what secrets the universe is hiding, or whose life is inextricably connected to yours. Finding your voice might not just change their world. It might lead you back to everything you thought you'd lost forever. Thank you for listening to my story. Please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, comment below, leave your like, and share this video with others.